Hello and welcome to an overview of the Boxall Profile Online, which is a diagnostic and planning tool for students with additional behavioural, social, emotional, mental health needs, which require assessment, analysis, and an individualised learning plan. The Boxall Profile Online is an assessment tool that we can use for students with social, emotional, and behavioural difficulties. Now, this can be applied to both children and young adults. Um, Previously, the Boxall Profile was a paper-based system. However, now they've put the materials online with lots more resources, which are really useful. Um, the aim of the tool is for early identification of these difficulties, and then it allows us to set targets and have a really individualized approach to those behaviours and that students' needs. It's also really effective in tracking progress and is useful for demonstrating those smaller steps of progress which we would see in learners with these types of needs. Within the Boxall Profile Online, there are two areas and tests. Um, that's for the different age groups of students that you'd be able to work with. So one of them is for children who are nursery and primary aged, and then the other is for young adults, so secondary age students. Now, when you put the child's date of birth in, it will automatically calculate and then set the test to the appropriate level. Um, the online system will automatically calculate standardized scores according to the age of the student, which helps give a comparison to other students with similar difficulties. Within the online profile, there are two strands, the developmental strands, so that will measure progress through aspects of development in early years and secondary education. That looks at internalisation of controls, organisation, self-regulation, for example. When you look online at the tool, you'll be able to see lots more details within there. The other strand is the diagnostic profile. This is where behaviours are described and things that inhibit or interfere with the child's engagement within school. So the self-limiting features, the areas that the student needs to develop in order to access education and improve. When you have registered your students, so name, date of birth on the Boxall Profile Online, the first step will be completing a variety of questions which are based upon the different developmental strands that I talked about earlier and the presenting behaviours that you would find. Now, as you can see on the slide, all of the questions are measured on a 0 to 4 scale. So it will identify very often, which would be up on a 4, and not at all, which would be a 0. It's important to read the question quite carefully because some of the scales can reverse according to what the question is. You need to answer all of the questions within each section, and then this will generate a developmental profile score for you. It's really important that the person completing the Boxall profile knows the student very well and has worked with them lots in the past. So normally that's either the class teacher or a TA who works with them very closely. So what does the assessment tell me? Once you've completed all of the graded questions within, the software will create a score for each of the developmental and diagnostic areas. Now, as you can see on the picture, the black marks um, indicate where the student's score is on the continuum, and the green is a standardized score, so that's where a child is in comparison to their peers um, with sort of typical behaviours. Um, and then obviously as you do your assessments over time, um, this increase or decrease of assessment scores can demonstrate progress in each of the strands. As I said earlier, once all the scores are calculated, you'll be able to use this information to then inform the targets that you set for the child in each area. Now, the system already has a whole bank of targets preloaded. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. So you will be able to then go in and select the most appropriate targets relevant for that student, where the thing that the highest demand dictates and where you want to start working first. You'll also be able to be selective to work on the targets that you know that you have resources for. When you have selected your targets for that individual that the profile has automatically generated, you'll then be able to select appropriate strategies that you can use within your setting that are directly linked to the targets that you have selected. The next step, once you've selected your success criteria and your targets, are the resources that you need to meet those targets. Now, the system will automatically generate appropriate resources linked to the targets that you have selected. Again, you can choose the resources that you have available at school or that you would like to use that you would think that would be appropriate to each individual linked to the targets that you've chosen. Now, if you don't have some of the resources available, the system's really great actually because it will also include web links and links to some of the resources that you can then download and make rather than going hunting for lots of different resources. So it's everything in one place. Bringing together everything that you've now selected, the system will also generate some success criteria, which you can then choose personalised criteria linked to the targets and strategies. The system, from everything that you select, will then create an individualised learning plan which is linked to the developmental profile in order for you to work on with the student either individually or in a group within a nurture setting, for example. And then you can add comments in the notes section reflecting progress or individual things that you haven't been able to select elsewhere. So moving on to evaluation and next steps, the Boxall profile online will then take you to an evaluation screen where you can detail any progress that the student has made so far. Now, we recommend within our special setting, we complete profiles at least termly in order to measure progress. We feel that we wouldn't do them any more often than that because obviously because the steps are so small, we wouldn't see observable progress in that amount of time. You can also then use the scores to compare when you've completed a series of profiles, say 3 or 4 in one go. We also use the strategies section. There's you can see that under that column there are some stars. Now, whenever we evaluate and plan next steps, we identify the amount of stars as a progress towards that target. So, for example, if they had 1 star, they would just be starting on that target. When all 5 stars are completed, then that would indicate that they were moving to the green area of the developmental strands, and we would be looking to set them a new target. This is a really effective tracking tool and demonstrates progress across all of the developmental areas. The trust has recently purchased a cluster license so that we will be able to allocate one log on to each school for the Boxall profile online. For schools that are already using the Boxall profile, we're unsure as to how data will be able to transferred at the moment. I believe there is a migration tool, so that will be something that we'll be looking into and assisting schools with. We're anticipating that the profile will be part of our Wave 3 provision within our Wave model for schools SEN, and it will be a useful tool for identifying areas of need and then planning and meeting needs effectively. Thank you very much for listening.